Want to get to know your fellow VeeFriend holders before VeeCon? Well, through the VeeFriends family, you'll meet other VeeFriends holders, learn why they bought into the project, and their hopes for the future of this community. Go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and follow VeeFriends Fam on Twitter to get notified when new episodes air. I'm your host, William Glass, holder of an organized ostrich core. And without further ado, on to the show. Mike, I'm excited to have you on the VeeFriends Family Show, a fellow VeeFriends holder.
That's right. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I
Of course.
got four of them.
Yeah. So which four do you have?
So my first one that I got is the macro micro, and then the second one I bought was Karma Kiwi, and then I bought the gracious Grasshopper, and then Headstrong Honey Badger. And I actually had the polished poodle, and I ended up selling it because I felt like I was over leveraged a little bit. You know, they say don't, spend money you can't afford, and I felt like maybe I dipped into the pot a little too much. And so I decided to offload one. And actually, the person that bought it was Sarah Bauman, who is the creator of the Women in Weapons NFT project. And so actually, my wife and I own one of her Genesis pieces. So it was kind of like a serendipitous sale because she didn't know that I owned it. And so it's kind of nice knowing that my V friend went to a good person.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's also, right, the power of being able to track transactions on the blockchain and NFTs, right? You know who you're selling to. You can figure that stuff
Exactly.
out, which is really cool.
Yeah,
So
so it was kind of neat, and it'll be nice to be able to see her at VCon now. So, which is kind of the reason why I'm doing this. So I really appreciate you putting this together because I feel like this is kind of the power of VCon is everyone else that you get to meet.
exactly. That was what I was feeling is, I'm excited to meet everyone, but I also kind of want to know some folks and get to know people leading up to the conference. And, it's tough if we're, a lot of stuff's going to be going on in that 3 or 4 days. So how can we start to build that relationships leading up to Minneapolis?
Right, absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny because I was thinking about how Gary Vee's been tweeting about how he wants to meet everyone. And you just start doing the quick math on that, and you're like, if there's 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour, it's like, all right, that's 3,600 seconds. And let's say he dedicates 10 hours to that. You're like, all right, that's 36,000 divided by, just over 5,000 people. And you're like, so you get 8 seconds. You know what I mean? It's like you get a bull ride with Gary Vee and that's it. So I was like, how do I maximize my time other places? And so I feel like it's just diving into the community because I mean, uh, that's where the value is, I think.
I agree. And I think that's something you can Discord, even in Twitter and all the different places, there's a lot of like positivity and people wanting to support each other. And I think that's part of the reason why what makes VeeFriends special in terms of all of the different projects that are out there.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think I said this in the Discord. I feel like we're all going to a wedding and we all want to see the bride and groom. We're so happy to be there. But, we're all sitting at our own table and, they might come up, like I said, for the 8 seconds or the 20 seconds or the 30 seconds, say hi, thanks for coming, all that kind of stuff. But you're going to be there with, the 10 or 12 people that you can really go deep with and, have lasting relationships with those people if you play it right or if you go in with that mindset. So I'm kind of seeing this as a giant wedding we're all going to, and I'm trying to meet my table right now.
Yeah, no, Mike, I like that analogy. That's a good analogy. Um, so with that, can you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, things that you like, not related to VeeFriends, just in general?
Yeah, so my name's Mike Frizzelle. I am co-founder and brewer at Able Ebenezer Brewing Company. It's a brewing company out of Merrimack, New Hampshire. I'm originally from California. I I got a marketing degree at Sonoma State University in Northern California, and then I joined the Army. I was an Army officer for 4 years. And when I got out, I used the GI Bill to go to grad school at San Diego State University. And when I was there, that was 2011, 2012, and the beer scene was starting to blow up in San Diego. And so I really got into that just as a hobby. And to get the most out of the MBA program, I geared all of the marketing studies and feasibility business plan development stuff toward opening this fictitious brewery that I might do in the future. And so by the time I was done graduating, I had a business plan done, but I couldn't find anyone to do it with. Because obviously when you start asking for people's time and money, it's like, oh, I got a baby on the way, I just got this new job. And so it's hard to find those people that are really dedicated to it, because it is, hard in the beginning, as you know.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I ended up actually calling an old Army buddy to see if he can get my foot in the door, because I knew he worked, through Facebook. I knew he worked at this biotech company. I was like, oh, I'm like, applying to this job. Maybe you could, put in a good word or something. And we just got to talking, and he was like, I'm actually more interested in starting a brewery. And I was like, it was very serendipitous. I was like, I am starting a brewery, or I want to. And so the whole conversation went away from biotech and it went straight to brewing, because, looking back on it, I've learned that a lot of biotech people like brewing as a hobby, because it correlates, the chemistry of it and just that mindset of a person. So you find a lot of brewers in biotech, as I've learned, in the 8 years that the brewery's been open. So
That's interesting. And where did the name come from, Able Ebenezer?
So it's actually named after a revolutionary, like American Revolution time frame hero out in New Hampshire. And so the able part is just people of ability. And then we didn't want to call it Ebenezer Mudget Brewery, because that was the guy's name. So we stuck with the Ebenezer. But basically the quick story on it is Ebenezer Mudget was a mill owner in the 1700s. And at that time, England passed the pine tree law, which said if a pine tree was over 12 inches in diameter, you were no longer allowed to cut it down and use it, even if it was on your property. And so they would have surveyors go around and mark the trees, kind of like, think like the movie Fern Gully, where they mark an X on everything. So they did that, and actually right here in the symbol. So they would mark it.
I see it. Yeah.
And that's called the King's Broad Arrow mark. And so even if it was on your property, you weren't allowed to cut it down and use it. And so this guy, Ebenezer Mudget, was like, screw that, I'm going to do it anyway. And when the sheriff came in to, arrest him, because he had hundreds of these trees he wasn't supposed to have, he was like, oh, give me a day to get the money together. And he got a bunch of guys drunk over a beer, and they ended up beating up the sheriff and riding him out of town. And it became known as the Pine Tree Riot. And why this one was significant was when the guys went to court in New Hampshire, the court that was set up by, England and the local government, they agreed with the guys. And so they got away with it. And so it made national news at the time that, oh, these guys, are pushing back and they're getting away with it. And so it kind of emboldened the colonists at the time. And that was in 1772. And so you start hearing about, more of these riots and more of these things. And then, 2 years later is the Boston Tea Party. And that's because all the scholars and writers live in Boston. They don't live in the backwoods of New Hampshire. But it really started with that. And so if you look at Revolutionary War flags, most of them have pine trees on them, because that was the main symbol of rebellion during the American Revolution. So if you see the Appeal to Heaven flag, it's the white flag with the pine tree. That was Washington's Navy, like First Navy. It was his 5 ships that he personally financed. The Bunker Hill Battle flag is a pine tree flag. The flag of New England is a pine tree flag. So all this, happens throughout history. And we just thought it was a really cool story, me and my business partner. And like I said, being from California, you see New Hampshire and everyone thinks of the motto, live free or die. And instead of just saying that, we thought it would be cool to have a story of what that actually means. So.
No, that's really cool. It's a cool story, and was not familiar with the pine tree riot. So thanks for educating me on that. That's
cool.
It's
funny. We actually learned it in the Army, because one of the things you do as an Army officer is you get a crash course in American history, and so you have to write papers. It's kind of like college, and because the war in the Middle East is a counterinsurgency, the moral of the story was, these things that you do in little small towns, they can have a big effect, and they can kind of snowball into bigger things if you don't play it carefully. So it was kind of like, watch what you do, like, be nice. And but I mean, it's kind of like business, you start a small business and you create a word of mouth buzz, and it's the same kind of thing. And I think it just kind of goes back to just, humans and, how we think and how we spread, word of mouth. And it's all that kind of stuff is very interesting to me.
It is, yeah. No, it's very interesting, and I didn't realize, what the army did in terms of the, diving into these different things that happened in American history and using that and applying that. It makes a lot of sense, right? Here's what happened. Here's what we've done, and here's why we were successful. And you thinking about that from, you know, the engagements that we've got in the Middle East and everywhere else. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Mike, VeeFriends, what led you to get your first VeeFriend?
Oh man. So I was thinking about this and I was like, I wonder how far back I should go with these stories, but I figure I'll just lay it all out. So actually that phone call to the army buddy, there there was two guys. And so originally the brewery started off with three business partners. And the phone call I made was to, I'll change his name. His name is Joe. And so I called Joe and he was interested and I was like, great. And I had gone to officer candidate school with Joe. And then I didn't see him for the rest of my military career. But we, stayed in touch because of social media. And when I reached out to Joe, like I said, he was interested. He's like, oh, I got this guy that I work with at this biotech, Carl. You guys were stationed in the same unit. We actually didn't know each other in the army, but we were stationed at the same place. And he was also an officer. And I was like, oh, this is great. And, I think when someone in the military says they're going to do something, you're like, we're jumping in, like we're going head first. And so it was pretty quick once we, got the idea. And then I was like, sure, I'll move to New Hampshire. Like, I don't care. Like, being in the army, I've lived all over the country. I was like, yeah, whatever. It's another place. And so I ended up moving to New Hampshire and it's the three of us. And it takes a long time to open up a business. I want to say I moved there in September 2013, and we didn't actually get the brewery open until June 2014.
Okay.
And so that's a lot of bleeding money. It's a lot of regulation, especially with alcohol. Opening a small business. I had an MBA, but they don't teach you about all the small town permits you're going to need. And the fire marshal really is concerned about wastewater for some reason, and so you have to become an expert on that. And you're just kind of like, I figure every industry and every location that you set up is going to have its own set of obstacles, and that creates a different type of stress. And so when we finally get the brewery open, I think we're open for about 4 months, and this one guy, Joe, he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're like, wait, what? Like, it's all contingent on you being here, Joe. And Carl stuck with it, and I'm still business partners with Carl, and he's great. But it was one of those things where Joe was like, he didn't want to do the grind anymore, like the nitty gritty stuff, which I think really separates, the people who have the social network dream of like, I'm just going to flip a business and I'm just going to hire people and, all this, I'm just going to throw money at it. And it's like, well, if you don't have any money to throw at it, you kind of have to grind it until you can make it. And, at this time, he wanted to leave. We were in no position to have him leave. And then he lawyered up. And then you're kind of like, what is going on? All of a sudden it's friends and, and then like lawyers are there and you're like, what is going on? I thought this whole thing was ending. And part of the negotiation, I actually just read this email in preparation of this, but it said, I'll keep a small percentage of the company, for the opportunity of coming back once the brewery's ready for my big ideas. And I was like, screw you, dude, like at that
Yeah.
time. And, I remember, that September to June before the brewery opened, like I lived on a 3-season porch in the winter of New Hampshire to save money. So I'd have to like get an apartment to put it in the business. And this guy's telling me he's the big idea guy. I was like, I got tons of ideas, man. But, it's the execution. And it's like, I, only have so much time in the day, only have so much money. It's like, I'm really trying to get this thing to work with Carl. And we just felt like we were putting in a lot more work. And so anyway, to wrap it back to VeeFriends and Gary Vaynerchuck, in 2015, I just stumbled across a YouTube video where he was talking to a USC graduate entrepreneurship class. And he does something of like, ideas are shit, execution's the game. And it was just some sort of like validation for me, because like no one was telling me that in business school, even like on a graduate level, like they don't tell you those things. So it was almost like, no, this guy's right. And it's cool that this guy just said it. And it kind of gave me validation of feeling that way, because it was exactly how I felt. And, to me, it was almost kind of like the equivalent of reading a really great author and you're like, this is exactly how I feel, but like, I just don't have the words to say it like this. And so it was kind of like one of those aha moments for me. And so I just felt like, Gary Vaynerchuck, like this guy gets it. And so I kept, ingesting all his information since. And then, so like I said, 2015, and then with the brewery, we do all our in-house marketing stuff, and just trying to get that word of mouth. So we kind of use the guerrilla tactics that Gary V is so good at, and we have a successful business, and so I attribute a lot of that to things that I learned from him. And so when it came around to the NFTs, I felt not indebted. I wanted to be part of it, but I also felt like, I've been taking information from this guy for, 5 or 6 years. Maybe this is just a good way to, pay it back, or, it didn't seem like a far stretch to me. Like the farther stretch was like trying to tell my wife about NFTs. And so that was the hard part. And the first one I was like, look, I'm gonna buy one, at mint. And I think I waited until it dropped to like 0.6. It was the macro micro. And I was like, I really just want this one. It's like, I like it a lot. And so I jumped on it. And then the second one I bought, I didn't tell my wife. I told her after the fact. So that was one of those forgiveness, not permission moves. And she's like, that's okay. And then, so I had those two after the mint. And then as the price kept going up, the offers, I just kept buying into it. So I want to say the next one was, 4 Ethereum, and then it was 5 Ethereum, and then 8 Ethereum. But, obviously everything was blowing up so much. And my wife is very good at investing. So once she saw that return on it, she was much more into it that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a tough conversation to explain NFTs. I really want to buy this doodle from this guy that I've been following on social media for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's, that can go, that can be a tough conversation. So was VeeFriends your first NFT, or had you invested in other NFTs?
Well, it's funny. So, going back to the ideas and tactics that Gary Vee touts, he's like, do a podcast. So I do a podcast called Road Soda, and we talk about beer and we talk about other things. And with the podcast, I feel like it has forced me to stay up to date on current events and different trends. So, it's a value add for people listening beyond just drinking a beer throughout the episode. And one of the things was NFTs. And when I first heard it, I was like, I'm just going to dive deep into this. You know what I mean? I'm not 100% sure what it is. And my wife is an interior designer. She does commercial interior design, but in college she used to paint. And so she had some paintings. And so when I first heard about NFTs, this is probably January 2021.
Okay.
Before everything like really, really blew up, I kind of, I'm very familiar with Adobe Creative. I did an undergrad again for graphic design. So I have like a base knowledge. And so basically I took one of her old paintings and I manipulated it. So it was a waterfall and it made it look like the water was flowing. And so I spent like an entire weekend on this, making this thing and setting up an OpenSea account. And, I think that's like when I actually set up my Twitter for the first time, because at that time, OpenSea was like, I had to DM them to actually get an account. It's not like what it was today. And so, I learned pretty quickly that, creating an NFT like this, no one's going to buy it because I'm not an artist. And I don't have that backstory, and that's really what the value of the art is, or the value of anything is. It's, what's the origin story? Who are the people behind it? And so, sure, I made this cool little waterfall thing out of my wife's painting, but I basically burned a whole weekend just doing that. But I was happy I did it because I already put in the legwork of understanding the NFTs and OpenSea to a certain degree, that when Gary Vee announced that he was going to do the VeeFriends Mint, it wasn't a I'm learning everything right now for the first time. It was just a oh, okay, like this is legitimizing something that I've already kind of dabbled in. So I was happy that I already did the legwork as far as wrapping my head around it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense, right? Yeah, you already had started dabble, you understood it. You also understood had an idea of like what makes a project successful. And then that
Right.
obviously exposure to Gary Vee and seeing him execute and having him, help, taking his advice over the years in terms of implementing it with Able Ebenezer makes a lot of sense.
Sure. And with Gary Vee, I felt like he was so passionate about it. And if I already learned that it comes back to who is starting the project, I was like, well, this is a no-brainer then. Of course I'll get at least one. I didn't foresee it blowing up to, what it has, but I thought maybe it would double in value over a year or something. Like, I really didn't see it as an investment opportunity. It was just something I was like, I just want to be a part of it. So I'm probably a lot of entrepreneurs, there's I guess some sort of risk in their personality, a little bit of leap without looking. You're like, or maybe it's more like a trusted intuition. I don't want to say like we're just like, oh, like, put it all on black or something like that. I feel like that's not really my personality, but there was something about following your intuition. And I felt like, he was a good bet,
Yeah. No,
especially
I agree.
nowadays with all these meme stocks. I'm like, I'm not on Reddit doing all this stuff. And, this is the closest thing I can get to insider trading is like, I just believe in this person. So that's good enough for
Exactly.
me. Yeah.
Well, it's a calculated risk too, right? Because as you said, you'd seen him execute. You'd already learned a little bit about NFTs and the space and what makes a good project. So it wasn't a huge lift, but same thing in terms of why I ended up, in the project was like, well, okay, I need to get some exposure. Gary's talking about a long-term vision, and at the end of the day, if I get 3 conference tickets over the next couple of years or next few years, like, it should be a fun conference based on all the people he has in his network, right? So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
the
I actually did
downside
that.
is just a cool conference.
Yeah,
I,
exactly. I actually did the math because I've never been to conferences before. So this is actually been my first one. And I was looking up, what does South by Southwest tickets go for? And, so I'm doing the math. I'm like, okay, if, at the time I want to say my first VeeFriend was like $2,000. And I'm like, worst comes to worst, I get 3 years of conference tickets, and South by Southwest, it costs like $800. I was like, I could probably just sell this, in the secondary market for 3 years and make my money back. So I felt like the downside risk was really not there at all.
exactly. Yeah, and I think that's part of the beauty of what he did to because a lot of people, or not, I'm not necessarily a lot of people, but there's definitely a high number of folks that are in the VeeFriends community that the mint was their first time minting an NFT.
Right.
So, but what's your vision? What do you think for the long term, right? We've obviously heard about Gary Vee's vision. Like, what is your hope for the like long term vision of the project, and then your VeeFriends in particular?
I'm really not sure. So it's one of those things where it's still like a hard concept to understand. Well, I think I intuitively know it, but sometimes when you understand something and then you try to say it out loud to someone else, it just comes out kind of jumbled. And so I've kind of took it upon myself to try to explain it to people in an easy, meaningful way. And sometimes I'll just direct them to Gary Vee, but some people just don't like that, the way he communicates. And I feel like I'm like the opposite. So I'm not really sure. I feel like the value of NFTs is obvious, especially with the NFL announcing that tickets are going to have NFTs, and houses are going to be NFTs, and the pink slip to your car is just going to be an NFT. So like the technology, all that makes perfect sense to me. As far as VeeFriends, saying that the conference is something that we can go to and network at, and learn what's going on, that's an easy value add. Talking about the IP, that's obviously a long-term play, and I feel like that's more in the belief that I have of Gary Vee. So lots of times when I explain it, I just say, and there's a conference you can go to, and that makes sense to people. And but beyond that, I'm not really sure. And like I said, I'm just kind of betting on Gary Vee, and I'm just trying to keep the mindset that I'm open to whatever's going to happen. I just I desperately don't want to be the type of person of like, well, I don't need that, and Facebook's stupid, and I don't want to become old. I'm actually turning 38 in like 2 weeks, and I'm like, I just don't want to get into that mindset. Like, I just want to force myself to keep exploring the unknown. So with this is kind of an unknown where I'm not 100% sure where these are going to go or what it's going to turn out to be. And but like I said, I believe in Gary Vee, and even like the book thing, I ended up buying like 60 of his books, and my wife is like, I feel like I have a bad feeling about this, and I'm like, but I feel like this is the feeling I had right before I bought a VeeFriends, and so maybe I have to trust that. So we're just gonna buy 60 books, you know what I mean? So it's like, and we'll see what happens, and so a lot of this is a leap without looking, but I really don't know. And like I said, I don't know how this translates to a brewery, but I'm fascinated by the space, and I'm open to the I don't know, the opportunity of what it might bring in the future, because you never know. Because I guess if I was in the Army, I could make the same assumption of like, what does the Army have to do with opening a brewery? And it's like, well, the answer is nothing. But eventually you have to realize, well, maybe there's a network thing you do, or people aren't just like in the Army mindset, like people like understanding other things. So I'm just going in with that mindset that everything I've done in my whole life somehow has like come back to be valuable in some sort of way. And so I can't imagine this would be any different. Even working as a kitchen or a server, it's like, then you open up a brewery tap room that becomes useful information, or just anything like that. I used to be like a janitor, and now like brewery is like cleaning so much. It's just like I don't know. There's just like so many like parallels that things are it's always like this long setup. And so I feel like this is just another part of it, and I'm excited to see where it lands in the future, because I know it's going to turn into something else.
Yeah, no, I agree. And who knows, maybe there's there's the empathy elephant with the empathy wines collaboration. Maybe there's a specialty Able Ebenezer that features micro macro, or whatever on there. Now that
you never know.
That'd be a really cool way to give back, right? The folks that actually own characters collaborate with business owners, because there's a ton of entrepreneurs that are in the VeeFriend community. So how can collaborate? And really interesting thought there. Mike, in terms of obviously gratitude, all that's a big piece of the community giving back. Is there anyone that you want to recognize, whether it's in the community, outside of the community, just show some gratitude or appreciation for?
I would probably just say, obviously, Gary, and I appreciate you for doing this, because when I picture the community, I picture people like you reaching out, and this is kind of what you hoped it would be, but it really takes someone making the first step. So I really appreciate you doing that. Jake and Sarah, the women and weapons creators, I feel like that was the first time where I felt like, oh, this is a very interesting community that can be very real. Like, I actually sent them beer,
That's awesome.
I probably not supposed to through the mail, but I did. But it's just creating those type of relationships, because as a business owner, I also realized that they're starting an NFT project, which is essentially starting a business, and they're kind of going through the same struggles, and it's just meeting people in those mindsets. So just how welcoming people have been, and I don't know, reciprocating. So just all those people that I've already kind of created these relationships with.
Love
And my
that.
wife
Yeah.
for letting me spend all our savings.
There you go. Yeah, definitely have to recognize her, and I appreciate you sitting down too. And this is what I had hoped for, is having conversations like this and getting to know who else is out there holding these doodles from Gary V. Um, anything you want to ask from the community? So at the same time, obviously business owner, are there things that you need support on or asks? Anything that you'd like to put out there?
At the moment, nothing in particular. If you guys listen to Road Soda podcast and anyone wants to come on, happy to have you. Just get the word out. I feel like anytime you can just keep conversations going, that's always a fun thing to do. But if not, see you at VeeCon, and let me know if you want some beer. I'll try to bring some.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can people connect with you or connect with the business outside of, obviously this show?
So my Twitter is just at Mike Frizzelle.
I'll link to it too. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. The brewery is ableebenezer.com. Just road soda. So yeah, any of those things, I'm pretty active. I check all those things, and yeah, that's how you can find me. I try to keep it easy. I don't have like weird handles. Everything is just Mike Frizzelle. I'm just like, just use your name. Yeah.
That's easy. I like that. Well, you've got a name that's distinct enough where you can probably get all of the handles. As a William Glass, there's I don't know how many of us out there, so it's really hard to get any handles that are distinct.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, that movie Unbreakable really screwed me over.
Yeah, exactly. Unbreakable. There's also I think it was a Brady Bunch episode. There's like a David Glass, and I think that was also like a fake boyfriend in The Proposal or something. I don't know. Anyway, there's a bunch of that stuff that it's tough to find. But
yeah, I got my hardest thing was living through like Snoop Dogg, for shizzle, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mike Frizzelle. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, but oh well.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for sitting down. I appreciate it.
William, I really appreciate it. I'll see you at VeeCon.
Who's pumped for VeeCon? Smash that like and subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you are a fellow VeeFriends holder, I'd love to have you on the show. Shoot me an email, VeeFriendsFam@gmail.com, and we'll get something on the calendar. I'm William Glass, your host and holder of an organized ostrich core. I'm wishing you nothing but the happiness, and I cannot wait to meet you in person at VeeCon.